So anyway, with that being said, I would like now to go ahead and start. And thank you for allowing me to speak and to introduce my administration. And once again, thank you all of you for supporting the public school system, as well as the administration, to the teachers, to the school leaders, for all three islands, Saipan, Rhoda, and Tinian. Thank you much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And before I allow for the formal presentation of the budget presentation, I would like to recognize the Legislative Bureau staff who are in full board with us this afternoon because of the critical juncture of the budget. No, so we do have, to my right is the legal counsel for the Senate and the committee, Antoinette Villagomez, and over to my lower left is Dave Dimapan, who you guys probably see often, more so than often, more so, his emails to you guys requesting information. Directly across to the gallery, we have Jolene Tagabuel. She is the legislative assistant for the Senate Fiscal Affairs. And to her left is legal counsel for the Senate, the other legal counsel, legal counsel Joe Bermudez. And to his left is Alexis Hofschneider, who is the legislative assistant as well. And of course, we have Jonathan that's manning the making sure that our public viewing, I mean the viewing audience via live feed will be able to see us in the exchange today. And assisting us in the floors, Sergeant at Arms John Santos and Ben Terlahe. I think we're in order. At this time, the chair now would like to ask formally Commissioner Dr. Ada, would you like to go ahead and present what you've submitted to the legislature, be it the original and the revised? And then we're going to drive, the members are going to drive their conversation or our questions to that effect. And I also would like to formally acknowledge the presence of Planning and Special Assistant to Management and Budget, Ms. Vicky. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. And then we can drive our questions to and from then on. So, Dr. Ada, please.
Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Senator Justo Kitugua, Senator Frank Cruz, Senator Terry Santos, Senator Vinny Sablod, and Senator Jude Hofsnyder. On behalf of the public school system and the CNMI State Board of Education, I would like to applaud you, all of you leaders, for including us this afternoon in your continued support to our local public health workers who continue to do an amazing job in this incredibly difficult crisis. I am humbled and honored to appear and speak before you all, our partners in education. Thank you on behalf of our 10,000 plus public elementary, middle, and high school students who entrusts our public school system in affording them all learning opportunities to succeed in life. With the new change and the new order, our theme for this year is reimagine, re-engage, and reopen. If you will see, if you can just take a look up here real quick, this theme has been our driving force for the reopening of this new decade. In your packet, you will see the opening guide of all the information that you need and the community may need in regards to the opening of the school. It includes all the dates, the timeline, and contact information. Also, in the other pamphlet, you will see the another opening guide, which is very similar. It was embedded from a SOP, standard operating procedure, guided by CDC and approved and already been looked at by Mr. Warren Villagomez from CHC. So the State Board of Education has already approved this opening guide. With that said, I would like to say that with me are the key individuals who support me in providing quality and meaningful education. And as you know, the coronavirus is the driver, and we are the passengers. When the pandemic shift left, we all turn to the left. If it shifts to the right, we all turn to the right. With that said, the pandemic is preventing us from going back to the normalcy of brick and mortar learning, which is paramount to safe and nurturing schools. And that has become our priority for that safe and making sure that our community and our students and our parents have some assurance that when they do come to school, they are secured and safe. We have 4 platforms that address the different aspect of mode of learning and instruction in this new opening. First, the full remote learning, which is spelled out in this on the first inside page of the pamphlet. Right next or on the top, you see the hybrid, remote, on-site, partial reopening, and full reopening, all spelled out. Currently, our plan is the hybrid remote on-site learning, but as COVID-19 landscape changes, we at PSS can mobilize to any of the 4 platforms that I have outlined this afternoon. On the last note, I just want to say that PSS continues to help adapt to the new realities. We want to make our community and our students comfortable with remote working, remote learning. We have set up the communication so that whatever we propose stands credible and consistent. Also, we are very cognizant of the self-awareness when everyone has to manage their emotions day by day. And I'm alluding to the social-emotional learning for our students as well. Any given day, one day they're good, they're okay, and on another day, they're terrified, they're scared, they don't know what's happening. So we are addressing that in our opening of this school year. We have also built and nurtured trust with our students to connect and lead them. And last but not least, for the most part, we have tried to simplify everything because with simplicity, it eases the anxiety and the stress level for everyone. PSS initially is proposing $40 million for the new fiscal year. And I know, we acknowledge that the coronavirus pandemic has resulted in a never ever before felt economic crisis. Because COVID-19 makes PSS particularly vulnerable, let us think about how we can all come together to help PSS rebuild and start to reopen under this very different environment of reimagining, re-engaging, and reopening public school system in this new decade, new teaching and learning. Lastly, with $28 million for fiscal year 2020 and 2021, we will be able to operate with $28 million throughout the year with 64 hours for our teachers and staff and to avoid furloughs and payless payday. With that said, thank you for allowing us. I will now yield to Mr. Tim Thornburg to give us the budget scenario breakdown. So Mr. Tim Thornburg, our Director of Federal Programs Officer.
Okay, it's true, we submitted a budget request of $40 million back in March. But as we all know, with the pandemic, the economy took a nosedive, and so we had to make some cuts. Everybody took a cut, so we reduced our budget by 6 million, so from 40 to 34. And then we were really, really fortunate this year when we received the education stabilization funds, because that filled a big hole in this year's budget. Personnel alone was 15 million. And we're carrying forward into the next fiscal year at least $6 million. So we go from 34 to 28. So this is how we've been able to use all the resources we have available to trim our request to 28 million. And you know, I can't remember when we've turned in a budget that low ever before. And I first came here back in 1990, so that gives you an idea of just how big a reduction it is. So, but that will be able to do it. We worked the numbers, and it works. So our ask is please 28. Thank you.
So, anybody else you wanna? So that's your presentation, basically the 28 million. No?
Miss
Anybody
Kath-
else wanna?
Miss Kathy will. I'm sorry. Miss Kathy will give us the historical background timeline of the budget action for this last school year, this fiscal year. Miss Kathy.
Chairman Jude Hofsnyder and members of the Senate Fiscal Affairs Committee, PSS Chairwoman Janice Tenorio, Commissioner Dr. Alfred Ada, and all PSS distinguished leaders, good afternoon. We are privileged here to discuss the PSS 2021 budget proposal. What follows is a brief history of PSS fiscal budget for the last fiscal year 2019 to current. In fiscal year 2019, the CNMI government appropriated through Public Law 20-67 PSS with 42 million, out of which a total of 36 million was received by PSS. There's a deficit of 6 million. Earmark funding of a total of 1.113 million was never received either. Outside sources under Chapter 9 of that public law, a total appropriation of 1.1 million was not received too. In fiscal year 2020, the CNMI government appropriated through Public Law 21-08 PSS with an original budget of 37 million. It was reduced to 27 million on February 10 of this year through OMB 20-097 memo. That is a decrease of 10 million. This was further reduced to 19 million through the Central Finance Update in March 2020. All earmarked funds were also suspended. PSS managed to stay afloat with minimum staffing patterns with funds from the Educational Stabilization Fund. There were missed 2 payroll periods that were paid to from the Educational Stabilization Fund. We furlough 190 days staff, but their summer pay covering June 16 to August 26 were also paid through the Educational Stabilization Fund. To date, out of the revised 19.2 million budget, PSS received only 16.9 million, and PSS is hopeful that the remaining 2.3 million from the central government will still be transferred before the fiscal year ends. To date, too, budgetary expenditures level amounts to 19 million already, and local expenditures are still incurred to prepare for the new school year opening on September 8th of this year. It can be noted too that during the first half of the fiscal year 2020, PSS was operating based on the original approved budget of 37 million. And cost-cutting measures have been put into place since COVID-19 virus onset. A 64-hour bi-weekly work schedule was not enough to sustain the entire PSS operations, thereby PSS furloughed 751 staff from April 15 through August 26 of this year, retaining a skeletal workforce of about 150 staff at the central office and at the school level. That will be all. Thank you.
Thank you, Director of Finance, Catherine Regalado.
Thank you, Commissioner. And before I recognize any of the members to pose their question, Ms. Regalado, that particular narrative that you just read out, you've shared that with Dave, right? With the printout that you emailed?
Yes.
Okay. So what you presented is the representation of the email received, which you have signed for the committee, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then this time I now open the floor to any of the members, to ask questions or pose any questions with regards to the presentation made by public school system. Senator Sablan, you got the floor.
Thank you, Vice President. And I'd like to welcome the PSS leadership, Commissioner, our good Chairwoman, Mr. Thornburg. Thanks again. You guys were in here, 2 weeks ago? Okay, so good to see you guys again. And also to the PSS staff, all the leaders and the program managers and directors. I know there was a little adjustment in titles and somewhat, so we're gonna have to get used to that. Welcome, Ms. Vicky Villagomez from OMB. I know it's gonna be a very challenging school year, but I thank you guys for being very creative in your approach to open the school year. I know many of the students are very, very excited to go back, even with the current situation that we're in. I know my children are really, really excited. They're tired of staying home, and we've taught them all we can at home. So, they're excited to really go in and get back into their learning. I have several questions. I probably won't state them all at once. We'll go for a couple rounds if the chairman does allow us. But one of my questions, and I'm not sure who to drive the questions to. Any of you can kind of just chime in for the answer, is in regards to the Education Stabilization Fund, and that's the $23.1 million that was allotted to our school system. I see here the components, and thank you for this narrative, very helpful. You have the component, the amounts, and the fund balance, and the deliverables. My question is to those that are that have not been used, like these school connectivity upgrades. Can you give us kind of a an update on the activities that are happening through that? So one is the school connectivity upgrades. The other one is the teacher training, the nurses. Um, how are we gonna put um, 22 nurses in the schools? Are they gonna be taken from? Um, of course, they'll be taken from our healthcare system, or is PSS allowed to kind of recruit nurses from abroad? So just those components that the funds have not been expended, maybe the status on the activities that are taking place right now.
Okay, I can answer that. So with remote learning, there are two very important pieces, which is the device and the connectivity. So for the device, every student in the public school system will have a device to work with remotely at home. In fact, we're procuring some more Chromebooks, which is a laptop form for our students. With connectivity, that is where our challenge is. Right now, we are working with the two service providers to help us, give us a discount for families that do not have connectivity at the least. So we're hoping that they can provide us for our families. For Tinian and Rhoda, that is our focal point right now, making sure that the students there will have connectivity. We're we have located some funds that I would like to propose maybe later on today in this session, how we can help the two islands make sure that they have their DSL line and the connectivity. For Saipan as well, um, you know, there's a thing called the MiFi, which is used for remote learning. With the MiFi, it's a secured device where they block off. Um, Forgive me for using the terminology whitelist, which is what they do is they block off social media, Facebook and stuff, because it's only used for education purpose. They won't be able to download movies and stuff like that. So anyway, for connectivity, right now the what we are going to tell the community is there's a lot of hotspots around with the Wi-Fi on wheels that goes around to all the communities. At this point, it ends this year. I mean this month, and what we plan to do is to put it at the youth centers in the villages so that students can go to the youth center during their own time and avail the internet connectivity. So there's the MiFi, there is the youth center, and then some families do have DSL lines, so they don't have to worry about connectivity. And there's also the schools. At the school, the library, the school connectivity is very reliable. So with that said, we are still trying to procure more DSL lines for the most needy family. I'm gonna ask Mr. Tim to talk about the nursing, the funding for the nurse, and how much we're still waiting for. Like the reason why you see the connectivity amount is still there because we put out an RFP and we're waiting for that. So,
Yeah.
Mr. Tim.
Yeah, we really tried to recruit nurses. We put ads in for 6 weeks. We also had two private firms, and there's just a dearth of nurses. They finally came back and said, "We're sorry, we just can't do it right now, and we can't do it with U.S. citizens." So that and you understand that everyone that works at PSS is a U.S. citizen. So we could not do the nurses. We were going to move that money around. Right now we've got three bids out. We've got an invitation, an RFP for the MiFis. We're looking at 3,000 MiFis for starters. And those would be for, particularly targeted for our low-income families that simply can't afford this, and we want to make certain that everybody's on an equal footing. So that's why we're going to be spending a lot of money, believe me, on MiFis. We also have an RFP out for 5,000 Chromebooks, and we have an invitation for bid that we will be opening tomorrow for sanitation supplies for our schools. So that's kind of where we are on that. And we've tentatively budgeted 320,000 for school sanitation. It could cost more. It just so much depends on the bids and what kind of response we get. We do know, because we opened Cagman Elementary School, for a 6-week summer program, that the cost for sanitation came in a little over $4,100 on an annualized basis. So per classroom, and then you multiply that times your number of classrooms. So like at Cagman Elementary, if you've got 30 classrooms and it's 4,100, that's like 120,000 for sanitation. And that's for, first of all, a deep cleaning, which we need because, these schools have been empty for 6 months. So you need that, first of all, so you get any mold, dust, etc. out. And then after that, it's daily cleaning. And then the other piece that we found is very, very helpful is some privatization, particularly for cleaning of bathrooms. You want the bathroom that your child goes to be just as clean as your bathroom at home. And we found that if we hire a firm and they're competitive, the costs are good, that it makes more sense than hiring additional staff. It's more cost competitive. If you're looking at the education stabilization chart, it's very detailed. But the one thing I will call your attention to is subtotal for fiscal year 20. It's about $15 million. So the preponderance of that $23 million is being spent right now, this year. The teacher training is ongoing. You've got the bids that are out. And then we've got a couple of school buses, one for 10 in and one for Rhoda. We just got 10 in for Saipan through a different grant. And that's kind of where we are, and we hope to carry forward again about $6 million to help with the costs of school next fiscal year. And that's kind of in summary what we're doing with the Education Stabilization Fund.
Thank you, Commissioner and Mr. Thornburg. So PSS is allowed, in this case, the inability to employ nurses for the schools. PSS is allowed to move these funds around. Are you guys only allowed to move it around into the components that are listed under the ESF, or are you allowed to go outside of that?
We've been given a lot of flexibility by the Department of Education. In this case, because we were unsuccessful in recruiting nurses, we will move it into maybe into our carry forward for next fiscal year. It just kind of depends. We'll see how that plays out.
That's great. That's very comforting to know that the flexibility is there, which allows you, Commissioner, to kind of move those and prioritize those funds into the most needed components of the school system. Because we are on live, I know many of the anticipation of the parents and students were learning that they will be learning remotely. And Tim, you mentioned that PSS has procured 5,000 Chromebooks. How are, I know there's more than 5,000 students, and a lot of the our constituents and parents come up and say, is it true that each and every student will get a Chromebook or a computer? Can we kind of just clarify that, and maybe how how were those selections identified? And I know there are students and home fronts that do have that those tools, the laptops and whatnot.
Okay.
So
Across
touch on that?
across the past 3 years, we purchased like 9,000 iPads, 3,500 laptops, and these were for student use. And so what we're doing is those will go out first because we already have the devices. And then we're getting the Chromebooks because it works extremely well with Google Docs, and so um, for the distance learning piece, that makes a lot of sense. But we have sufficient, more than sufficient devices, and we purchased enough not only for our public schools, but also for our private schools.
Thank you for that, Tim. Just one more, Chair, and then I'll go ahead and yield to back to you for other
Senator
members.
Lon, if
Go
I
ahead,
may.
go ahead, Commissioner.
If I may, just want to give you guys the plan, the assurance of when we open on September 8th, between September 8th and October 5th, we plan to bring in students and parents in for orientation 10 at a time. We will bring them in. We will show them how to care for the device and how to navigate the Blackboard platform, which is the new mode of learning.
So that's great. There'll be some direction for
Yes,
everybody
training,
for the
orientation for
user
parents.
platform, right? Okay, that's good. So just last one from me. I'm happy. We're all happy to learn that these funds were also used to get back all the staff, teachers, and staff that were furloughed. The mission of the central government also is to try to bring back as much furloughed staff on the central government side. Thinking creatively and trying to see what kind of adjustments we can do to bring those employees back. We all have to anticipate, and with these funds, it's really, we're very lucky that we have all these federal funds from coming in from different angles. The ESF here, we have the unemployment with PUA. We've recently received stimulus packages, and we're also looking forward and very excited, right, for a decision for the second stimulus package. We hear on national platforms, news platforms, that there is also a second wave of unemployment assistance that will be coming to us by the federal government. We all have to really be thankful that these funds are coming to our to the home front and to our people and to the government. But we also have to prepare ourselves when that ceases, and we hope that there will be continued printing of currency, because that's how these funds are being, available. The United States, president is printing money. That's how he's getting this stuff, right? So we're thankful for that. We all are, and let's just anticipate that, and prepare ourselves. Be proactive that when this stuff stops, even all the way to the home front, our families are gonna have to kind of tighten the belt like they're doing right now, but prepare for that worst case scenario where we're gonna have to kind of self-sustain ourselves. And that brings me to the final statement, and that's gonna go to our great counseling division and our counselors in the school system. Please keep an eye on our students on the mental health aspect, because when you have parents that are furloughed, it creates a very stressful atmosphere at home. This is very, very hard to deal with at the home front. And when parents are dealing with that and the stresses of trying to take care of obligations, personal obligations, and trying to finance their families and put food on the table, these stresses funnel through the children. And those are the exact children that are going to come to the school front. So let's, Commissioner, maybe we can kind of really hone in on that and kind of grab that anticipation by the horn, and make sure that our students are in great mental health conditions, and bring them in so they can learn better. But we're all going through these trying times. It's stressful for all of us. I can only imagine how stressful it is for the kids to really look at how their homes have been impacted, right? And they're forced to understand why they're going through these things. So I really hope that the mental health aspect part of our educational system is focused on. With that said, I thank all of you, from the Senate, and the people that we represent out in the community in the CNMI. We really give special thanks and our, to the school system, the teachers, the staff, everyone behind the scenes, to for really preparing the school year. I'm really excited to see what this creative school year, challenging school year brings. But please know that our doors will always be open. And it's cliche, and it's always said on this floor, and I'm sure in the lower house, that all of us support the public school system. So with that said, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and I yield to the other members.
Jesus Masi, Senator Vini Sablan. Before I recognize the member, I want to recognize the presence of Dave Hatlick, Secretary of Finance. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Sorry, Chair.
chime in.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, may I? Okay. Thank you, Senator Sablan. That was your concern in regards to mental health. Right now, I assure you, the teachers and the school administrators and the directors are currently are on training in regards to the remote learning and online learning, as well as the mental health portion of the training side for the teachers when the school starts, whether it be virtual or face to face. So all teachers will be trained in regards to that. We have a special grant that we just received. I believe it's 1 million, no, Commissioner? 1.8 million for that mental health program, and we do collaborate also with our partners in the government and the nonprofit organization. So the school-based administrators and teachers are also being trained and will be ready to assess or do an input in regards to the mental health before even before the students even start academically or any curriculum be started. So I really give kudos to the commissioner and his key management and the instructional and curriculum side, and also Dr. Yvonne Pangilinan, who is the head person for the mental health shop that is also conducting the that portion of the session. So thank you for that, and we do realize that it is important with everything that is going on, from recovery of the typhoons, plus the pandemic, plus the economic downfall, plus the closure of the school in regards to they've been out that long. So the mental health, emotional, and their educational growth is really considered. Thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Jesus Masi, Chair Tenorio. Senator Cruz, would you like to recognize Senator Cruz?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and again, thank you, Commissioner, Chairwoman, and your PSS team for this meeting. I know that this is very critical for PSS, and especially for our kids. My concern here is the safety of the students when it comes to the opening of the institution on September 8th, right? I raised this concern with NMC in regards to effective ventilations on our institution for the classes. I don't know if the PSS have a good ventilation system at the school, just to be in a precautionary measure with bringing back students to face-to-face classes. And that's my major concern on, and I hope that this COVID-19 will not spread as to what our neighboring Guam is spreading so fast. So I'm very concerned about that. I know that education is very important for our students, but safety is much more important than anything else. So that's my concern. And the other thing is, I know that PSS through Congressman Kilili issue a lot of computers, laptop for the students. Are you guys still doing that to provide the students? And I think this is very important now that we have this situation, the pandemic, unprecedented pandemic, and perhaps maybe with those students or family that don't have the access of a computer. And I heard you guys mention about MiFi that will be providing for the students. I don't know if that's going to be costly, because I understand that MiFi, if If it's unlimited, probably that will help the students. But if it's limited, I don't know how far the students can continue to learn on MiFi. So that's my concern, and I hope that and I know that again, that's when funding comes in, that much more needed for that. So those are the things that I'm looking into, the in opening the school or providing a quality education, either to face or online. So I hope for the best, and like I said, I know education is very important for our students, but safety is much more important.
Okay.
So I hope that that my concern will be probably you guys are already addressing it, but I hope that everything will turn out as everyone is expected for the best of our students. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, may I?
Thank you, Senator Cruz. You want to respond to that?
Yeah.
Commissioner?
Regarding ventilation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, air conditioning is the most favorable thing for the classrooms, even now, right? With CDC guidelines, they really are encouraging us not to use air conditioning because it carries the aerosol and the virus throughout inside the classroom. So a lot of the principals have been informed to retrofit their classrooms in as much as possible to open up the windows and the doors. Yes, it's warm and all that, but like I told them, our forefathers had their learning and teaching and learning under a hut. They learned okay, and this is only for 2 hours a day, throughout the day. So we're working on that right now. So thank you for bringing that up. And for sure, everyone has. We did our inventory. Everyone has a device to bring home beginning September 8th. Now we're trying to work out the technical part of if they lose it or it's not working. We will address that as well. So thank you for bringing that up. Appreciate it.
Thanks. I'd like to recognize the chair for the Education Committee, Senator Kilgua.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, Commissioner, Chair, and everyone who are here in this chamber, and also welcome to this meeting, Secretary of Finance, David Atali. First, I would like to read this statement from the former Associate Commissioner for Administration. And this statement is dated July 9, 2020, and it's addressed to Mr. Demopan. And I guess this communication is requesting PSS for a revised budget. And here's the statement. It says PSS Finance, in consultation with the COE, BOE Legal Counsel, and BOE Chairman, have found that a revision to our original budget submission as approved by the State Board will yield or require budget cuts, adjustments at our end. Therefore, the BOE and PSS leadership feel that it will be irresponsible or a breach of their fiduciary duties for PSS to voluntarily revise our budget, knowing that our school district requires the amount provided in our original submission to effectively operate and provide quality public education for next fiscal year. However, on the communication submitted by the Commissioner of Education and the Chairman of the Board, dated August 6, 2020, PSS in this communication has reduced or revised its submission for FY21. So my question is, did PSS and the Board of Education, based on the July 9 communication, will breach their fiduciary duties?
Thank you, Senator Kirwa. I don't know what to say, but I'm really appalled because you kept mentioning also the chair for the board and the date, and that's me as a chair, and I do not recall signing such a letter. Can I have a copy of that, Commissioner? Can you explain?
Joe, can you share with the chair?
Yeah, I believe Mr. Ed Tenorio, can you please come to the, or respond to that, or Miss Kathy?
And
Okay, I see was email sent by Kimo and a cover memo with my signature on it that I've never recall.
if Madam Chair, if I may interject here, the communication that floor leader was alluding to was an email request for information
This one.
by the fiscal affairs. I mean the fiscal analyst, Mr. Dave Limapon, to Mr. Rosario, in which he in turn responded as read by Senator Kirua.
Mm-hmm.
And then the subsequent letter of request for information for this particular budget hearing for today, you guys responded, or your PSS responded on August 6th, with the line of questioning that I sent to PSS and BOE for in preparation for this meeting today. So I again, in sum, Senator Kiriwa is just probably trying to understand,
Yeah,
these two documents.
I understand.
it's kind of-
Even
it's
myself, I'm trying to comprehend it
contradicting,
here.
so-
I'll you to Commissioner or Mr. Ed Tenorio. We'll just go ahead. Thank you,
Sure.
Chair and Senator.
So PSS, you used to have the floor. PSS.
Mr. Tenorio will answer that question. So,
Dead.
Technology always changes every 6 months. So, excuse the. Anyway, I'm relating to Senator Kiruga's new concern on the letter. I think what Kimo was trying to say is that we submitted a budget already, that if we need to bring it back to the board, we need to go through the whole process. And this where we're going through all the transformation of running the government with the COVID-19. So we decided to just keep it. And when it comes to this session, that we're gonna articulate what is really needed, given that now we know the other source of funding coming from the federal side. It's taking us a while to balance things out. In the beginning, we heard that the cut really on the general fund, we went from 37 to 19. That's a substantial cut, moving funding source from local to federal. And you know what are those? That's the pandemic, the PUA. When we furlough people, we stop expenditure. And also Kathy mentioned that to date, our expenditure is approaching the funding level of the revised budget of $19 million. So I don't know whether it's a sin for the board to say that it's, but I guess it's just that resubmitting the budget, going through the whole process is what probably Kim was saying. Maintain the 40 million and we'll work downwards as we receive all the other, unknowns back then. We don't know how much we're going to be receiving from the stabilization fund. Now we know. Now we show you, now we share with you how we allocate those funds and also how we're taking fiscal prudence to ensure that next fiscal year there's enough money to help the general fund. At $20 million, you heard from Tim, never heard. This is the first time we received a budget for PSS with over 1,000 employees, the biggest entity, agency in government, over 10,000 kids. It's one of the biggest costs of the semi government. You look at it, 25% of the budget, the general fund, should go to PSS. That's a huge chunk of the general fund. So I'm not going to try to defend Kimo. I guess he's simply saying that we'll keep it. That's our submission for FY21. We submitted it to the governor, submitted it to the legislature. That's how much it's going to cost to run PSS if without. I mean, with funding requirement, not including the COVID-19. COVID-19 is something different. So that's why we said just keep it at 40, and then this kind of discussion where we balance things out now, we can say we don't need 40. We're asking you now, we need 28 to continue to run public school system under the COVID environment. And that's very critical because we don't know what are the other unknowns in terms of funding PSS. We learn, as we change the governor's emergency, is it gonna extend? If it extend more, we need to comply with the COVID-19 guidelines. Those are added costs. Those are still, we're trying our best to cost it out. We did cost out the Kagmang Elementary School, as Tim mentioned. We had 110 students given the COVID-19 guidelines. 110 students served for summer school, and there was a positive result and complying with the COVID-19. That's why we're surprised. So when we cost it out, we said, wow, now we know how much it's going to cost to open up school. And that's why Tim is looking at about, $5 to $8 million, just an additional cost, very bare minimum cost to comply with the COVID-19. So I'm sorry if, that's the situation that we have some misunderstanding here, but I think moving forward as we look at our funding requirement, and the timing of the cash coming in from finance to PSS is very critical at this time. I hope I answered Senator Kiruga's question.
In the interest of time, Mr. Chairman, we'll move forward, but we have to be careful when we use such phrases, breach of judiciary duties, because when I read this, what the impression it gave me is that we don't want to get blamed. You cut it and you get blamed. So I just want to just make it clear that in spite of this letter, the August 6 letter, cover letter, the board and PSS are willing to reduce further down from 40 to 28, risking the breach of fiduciary responsibilities of the board. Okay, so we'll move forward with that, and I have some questions while the Secretary of Finance is here. uh, the I kept hearing this a few times about the how costly it is to meet the COVID-19 requirements, but yet PSS is willing to ask for $28 million dollars. So with this $28 million that you're asking, and the commissioner mentioned earlier that the schools will be might be on a 4-day next school year. My question is, if this $28 million dollars, if in the event that the legislature found additional funding and appropriated $28 million to PSS, will PSS continue on its plan for a 4-day school week?
Yes, Senator JQ, with 28 million for fiscal year 2020-21, we will be able to operate throughout the year with 64 hours for our teachers and staff, 4-day work week to avoid furloughs and payless payday. And the reason why we know that 40 million may not be the reality of our given our economic crisis and the COVID-19. We are willing to do our part by contributing to help. I know we're sacrificing our children's academic life, but we're all in this together. And I believe that it is my greatest fear. Don't want to go back to that. Back in April, when I couldn't pay our teachers 2 times, payless payday. And on top of that, I had to give a furlough. Very painful. It was very painful for me. I can imagine the people receiving the bad news, but because of that lesson learned, we want to make sure that in the future we will secure ourselves with 64 hours to make sure everyone is at least taken care of throughout this pandemic. Last but not least, if I may, we did a survey on how many students do not have Wi-Fi at home or connectivity, and out of the 10,000 students, 6,000 homes do not have the DSL or the internet connectivity. So with that said, we kind of like guesstimate $30 per month for 10 months, which is the 1 year of DSL line at home. It amounts out to $300. We need $1.9 million to suffice the 6,000 based on our survey. That number will change because we're going back to streamline how many of these 6,000 belong to a family. So it will probably go down to maybe 4,000, hopefully 5,000, but that is at the highest amount. I did find some potential money for the outer islands, for Rhoda and Tinian. If I may I go ahead and discuss that now, or should I wait till later? No. I'm sorry? So there is a $60,000 money appropriated for the amphitheater in Tinian. By all means, I want to provide the amphitheater for the community as much as possible, but with 60,000, that's not even enough for the A&E. You need at the least 300,000 plus for the amphitheater. So that's 60,000, if I may ask. Can we divert that funds to buy MiFi for every student in Tinian? And then, with that said, I can assure you that we can get the DSL lines for our Tinian students. We really want to make sure that the Tinian and the Rhoda students are assured a DSL line at the opening of the school. Since I'm talking about this already, I'm going to talk about the Rhoda. So Rhoda, there is some funding for a riding mower and more air conditioning in the classrooms. But all of their air conditioning are in good shape. And since we're retrofitting some of the classes to open up for ventilation, I am proposing, if I may, to use the funds, divert that funds to buy DSL lines, MiFi connectivity for the community. Over. Sorry. and that's the end of my proposal. Sorry.
Thank you,
Commissioner.
Commissioner. You don't need to be reserved to mention Rhoda and Tinian schools because you oversee them anyway. So, so this is the venue to ask out. And I don't know the exact language of those two appropriation, but I do know it was the supplemental budget for PSS, of which a lot of it has to do as given to the Commissioner of Education for expenditure authority. I don't know. Maybe you can allow us to understand the exact provision of it, whether it provides flexibility. So if there is, then maybe you can use it. We don't need to change. However, if there's no flexibility, then we need to change. We need to provide. But that's something that I think you and I discussed it earlier with respect to the amphitheater, which you would consult with the parents because they're the ones that actually request for that, Tinian Elementary School. So we certainly can help each other. And priorities change, no? So we appreciate that. But I don't want to take away the floor from Senator JQ. He's still got the floor. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, during our meeting with the Education Committee, I asked for that particular appropriation, and I'm still waiting the response from PSS. And I recommend that you revisit that particular appropriation, the supplemental, because there are a couple of activities there that are CIP projects. And if you feel that there's a need to reappropriate and reprioritize the funding under that appropriation, submit your request, and that request should come from the House. However, it is my belief that that request can be inserted in this budget to suspend and reappropriate the funding. But it has to come from you. I requested that during the Education Committee meeting, and the feedback was that there's no information on that at that time, and forthcoming respond to that appropriation will be coming. So we appreciate if you can take a look at that and make suggestions or recommendations on, and hopefully the legislature will consider your request. Now going to the budget, there are currently in the cover letter that the chairman requested for information. On number one, it says here that is your office a recipient of earmark funding? And the answer is NA. And I understand that for fiscal year 20 budget, the legislature in that outside source funding, 65,000 was in that budget from the tobacco settlement, and $204,906 from the compact impact. And your director for finance earlier said that these earmarks were suspended and PSS never got the money. I want to know who suspend these appropriations. Only the legislature can do this. Who suspend these two earmarks that you didn't get?
It was in the public law that was issued. Here. I'm sorry.
Okay. The chair, if there's no objection, I would like to just go ahead and ask.
21-8. That the earmark funding is suspended. It was mentioned on page.
Excuse me, Ms. Regalado. Can I just go ahead and allow Mr. Tenorio to chime in on this question?
Thank you, Chair. Actually, it's not suspended. What Kathy was probably going to say is that we haven't received the CAS. The CAS always comes in very late. The settlement money, even the compact impact money. Normally, at this time of the year, OMB will allot that amount, and if there's any adjustments based on the outside source, then OMB should inform or the recipient that there's a reduction. But we haven't received any notice of reduction based on the appropriation, so we still haven't received the CAS. So the answer is probably it's not suspended, but the CAS hasn't arrived.
So,
I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Chairman,
Senator.
since the Secretary of Finance is here and the OMB director is here, may we ask whether there is money that is in the appropriation from the tobacco settlement and the compact impact that will be forthcoming to PSS for this fiscal year?
In terms of the, I don't have the information on the tobacco settlement. I am aware of the compact impact, that the compact impact funds has been put on hold. Only a portion of the compact impact funds has been transferred to the CNMI, and that OIA is reviewing the formularies of all the jurisdictions that will be receiving compact impact, and they have not completed their review or their audit on the compact impact. We received only a portion of it, and that's $750,000, and the governor has decided to allocate that first portion until we hear more from OIA to NMC.
What about the tobacco, Vicky? Mrs. Villa Gomez, do you know about the tobacco settlement?
The tobacco settlement funding normally gets transferred into the Department of or the CNMI Treasury. And last year, the CNMI received $561,506. Um, that funding should have been allocated pursuant to the percentage um, pursuant to the percentage authorized by law. So there's a percentage of that goes to the public school system and several other entities. Public law, I believe it's Public Law 13-37 dictates that.
Mr. Chairman, maybe in the interest of time, we will just ask the Secretary to look into that and see if there's funds, if those funds are already there, and see if the funding that is earmarked for PSS, if he can help PSS get some of those funding. And on this response sheet, it says that there's 152 employees of PSS that were moved to 152 locally funded employees that are moved to the federal funded program. Is this transfer of funds from local funds to federal funds, is this going to be till the end of the grant or the fiscal year?
Yes, September 30th is the end date for that. In other words, we picked them up under Education Stabilization Fund from the period, I think it was sometime in April, all the way through to September 30th. We paid their, the summer payment for our teachers. And so essentially, almost all PSS staff have been partially federal this year because there was insufficient local funds. And again, that Education Stabilization Fund really was a godsend. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be here right now having this hearing. We'd still be on furlough.
I will get to the federal funds. There are, based on the response sheet, and the finance director mentioned there are 751 employees that are on furlough. I want to clarify because the statement here says furloughed or terminated employees. How many were terminated and how many were furloughed?
I'm gonna yield to Ms. Lucrecia Borja, our Human Resource Director.
Good afternoon. How many employees were furloughed and how many employees were terminated? It's actually 717 total. Initial count was 751 that were furloughed. However, on June 15, the group 2 that were supposed to be furloughed were actually remain on board. The principals and registers, as far as terminated employees, no employee was terminated out of the 717 that were furloughed.
Okay, no, thank you. I heard from the director of finance that the furlough period is from April to August. Am I correct?
Yes.
However, on the response sheet, it says length of furlough period 4/15/20 to 4/14/21. Are these employees will be continuously furloughed until April 14/21?
I can answer that if that's okay. So, based on our regulation for the furlough period is an employee may be furloughed for no less than 31 days, but up to 12 months or at least 12 months. So, in the event the organization, the system has the funding available to reinstate employees in consultation with the commissioner and key management, that's when we make those decisions to what group of employees to bring back. So, it can go as far as 12 months, but no less than 31 days.
PSS should have already an idea or a plan which employees here will go all the way to 4/14/21 and which will be on furlough. Can I get an answer as to what are these group or who are this group of employees? Are they maintenance at the schools? Are they transportation staff? Who are these that might possibly be furloughed all the way to April 14, 21st?
Okay, thank you for that question. As a matter of fact, just today, the reinstatement memo was broadcast to all employees this morning, and so I have a copy in front of me. So basically, on September 1, all furloughed school-based non-certified staff will be reinstated. The 64-hour biweekly work schedule will resume, and then austerity Fridays will begin for them on September 4th. Then on September 21, all furloughed bus drivers, bus conductors, and mechanics will be reinstated. The 64-hour biweekly work schedule will still resume for them as well. And austerity Fridays will for them will be on September 25th. And then on October 1, all furloughed central office non-certified staff will be reinstated, and the 64 hours bi-weekly work schedule will also apply to them. October 1, all locally funded employees who were temporarily funded under Education Stabilization Fund will revert back to local funding. As well, the 64 hours will resume for them. Austerity Friday for that group will resume on October 2nd. All federally funded employees will continue the 80 hours bi-weekly schedule. So that is the latest update we did provide to our employees as of this morning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I understand that federally funded employees will continue on 80 hours. Are they on the same salary schedule as those on the local funds?
The answer is yes, correct.
Okay, thank you. The response sheet asks whether PSS has hired new staff or additional staff that are funded under local funds, and the response is yes. I would like to know, because PSS furloughed 751 employees, and at the same time PSS has hired additional people under local funds. Can get an explanation on that?
And I can respond to that as well. So in response to COVID, before we actually hired on 4 provisional temporary hires, which is for 90 days only, and that's in response to the needs of the Procurement and Supply Office and the Human Resources Office. Unfortunately, we had many staff that were out on long-term medical, and before we even recruited the 4 emergency hires for 90 days, we actually reached out to the schools and the programs to see of those furloughed staff that we can bring back. And so we were not successful with that. So we were able to bring the 4 provisional hires for 90 days that have experience and expertise in both the human resource field and in procurement and supply, because that's where the need was. We were really, really short staffed during this period, which is one of our busiest times during the summer.
And locally funded.
They're not yet locally funded. They're brought in under Education Stabilization Fund at the moment.
It's interesting because they're funded federally, but the answer is yes, they're funded locally. Please make sure that this is the response here jive with the funding source. Now, Mr. Chairman, if I may continue.
Sure, Chair.
On the federal funds, PSS anticipates $72.9 million for 2021 on federal. And out of the over $72 million for FY21, all of these grants can only hire 223 employees. Can I get an explanation with $72 million why PSS can only hire 223? Can PSS look into possibilities of transferring some of the locally funded employees into some of these grant funds?
Yeah, this is something we have to be really careful on, because we have a supplement, not supplant regulation. Now, that does not apply to the Education Stabilization Fund, which is impact aid, which allows us to do exactly what we did, move people from local to federal. But for example, we've got a 17 million food service grant, and that's all contracted out. We have like maybe 8 part-time monitors and a couple of staff, because that was the best way that we could operate that program, and we're happy with our contractors, and it's a way to get more of the federal funds into the private sector. Some of the other money, for example, the Career and Technical Education Center at MHS, that is a construction project, and it will employ a number of people for a very short term, and that'll be it, because again, it's construction. If we look at our GeoBond projects, our rural development projects, again, those are construction too, so you're not going to have a whole lot of employment there, except during the construction period.
On the consolidated grant, I'm pretty sure, Tim, that flexibilities are there if PSS asks. There's almost $17 million for only 62 staff, and I know that the Title I, you have quite a number of millions of dollars, and since you have these employees at PSS that may be qualified to be hired under Title I, or funding source can be transferred to them, and re-examine the contractual basis that Title I is giving out to outside personnel, and instead hire or transfer qualified teachers to be a Title I teacher in some schools, be a resource teacher in some schools. These will provide opportunities for our own 751 teachers or employees that can be funded under the consolidated
Yeah,
run,
if-
particularly the Title I.
Okay, if I may answer that. Well, first of all, we have about 36 class size reduction teachers. We have a number of Title I teachers. We have literacy coaches who are master teachers. But the biggest expense in the consolidated grant is really the $668 that we provide per student to each school, so that the school can make the decisions at their level what they want to do. If they want to buy additional computers or if they want to buy a special reading program, they can do those things. So we give a lot of flexibility to our principals who have risen through the ranks, being teachers, counselors, and then becoming principals. So we give a lot of latitude to our principals and the leadership at the school level to make those decisions.
So probably the commissioner can remind them to look into that flexibility and try to hire the teachers that are qualified. I think a lot of teachers can be are qualified at PSS to be literacy coaches, to be resource teachers, and rather than contracting outside personnel, but hire the one like Guam. What Guam is doing is that they hire full-time teachers under Title I, and they work in the schools and not a personnel from the outside. Now that we have, and this is an opportunity and the right time to start looking at this, because we have a number of very well trained and educated teachers in the system that can be well under the literacy, and they can be under resource, and they can be teachers of Title I, but teachers that are in the system now. So I suggest that if PSS can take a look at that and see how we can work out to provide more employment to the current teachers who are furloughed or who are qualified to take over some of these positions in the school level.
Yeah, I think we're bringing back all of our teachers, all of our teachers, and let's remember that our Title I teachers that are contracted are former teachers, as you well know, who retired and then came back and are serving as tutors at our schools. So we try to capture as many as we can, but on occasion we strike out. A good example is with the nurses. We really wanted to hire nurses, but we were not successful.
Okay, Tim. Probably my question will come from I don't know, Director of Finance or Personnel. Who pays for the friends benefits of federally funded employees?
Let me
Their-
answer
their-
that. It's a federal grant.
The federal grant.
Yes.
What about their payout in case they terminate from PSS and they have leaves that need to be paid? Who paid for the leaves?
Yeah, when they resign or retire, we pay whatever annual leave and other benefits that they have accrued, and it gets paid if they are federally funded. It gets paid out of the federal grant.
Okay. Now with the situation that we are facing, what is the possibility of employees who are coordinating or working on under specific grant to, if not 100% funded under the grant, at least 50-50 will be under the grant, and then 50% will be under local. What's the possibility of
Yeah,
looking into that?
yeah. Let me answer that. With our federal grants, we try almost all the time to have them 100% federal, but on occasion that there are splits, and we can do splits too.
Because in the past we just kind of fund them 100% with local and say a certain percentage will be in kind to whoever's overseeing the grant or handling the grant. So now with the situation, I think it'd be good to really look into that, how now they can be partially funded by the grant rather than just in kind on the grant. Okay, thank you,
Okay.
team.
You're welcome.
On the can I ask the Director of Finance to reiterate the the funding, the local appropriation that you mentioned earlier, in which the local government never transferred to PSS? The Secretary is here, and see if the Secretary can help PSS look into what happened to the funding.
For fiscal year 2019, PSS was appropriated with 42.8 million. Out of that, PSS received only 36 million. There's a difference of 6 million. Earmark funding of 1.113 million, we never received too.
I know the Secretary here is that was not during his tenure. Were you already there, Secretary?
For 2019, I was half the fiscal year I was
So
part.
so
I
maybe
am
we,
familiar with.
maybe we can ask him what he can do, whether it's too late already or he still can look
The
into it.
FY 2019 budget was reduced. We adjusted the FY19 budget due to austerity. We had a reduction in revenues, and we adjusted the budget twice, in April and in June. And so the original appropriations of $42 million was reduced by 26% at the time.
What about the earmark? Earmark funds.
Earmarks is also included in the reduction.
But according to her, PSS did not receive not even a penny.
Well, let me just also remind the PSS, as well as just to inform the Senate. FY19 was the administration and PSS got together and negotiated the final fiscal year 2019, and we asked PSS, how much do we owe you, or you feel you are owed? My office came back to PSS and shared what we feel we owed, and we negotiated and finalized the 2019 budget. I offsetted more than $6 million in GLHI and Chapter 2, Chapter 7 payments to the CNMI government, and we offset and ended the fiscal year clean. And we said we're going to move forward and start FY20 based on the budget appropriated.
Mr. Chairman, I don't mean to interject. Look, Mr. Chairman, Chairwoman Tenoro keeps raising her hand when she wants to chime in, but go ahead, no, Janice. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. And Senator Kirugwa, thank you for that message. First off, Chair and Senators Committee, I want to apologize in regards to the language that was used from Kimo's email and the letter that was sent in regards to the NA and whatnot with my signature on it. I believe that I've sent an amendment to it, but Nevertheless, it already gone out, and I want to apologize in regards to that, in regards to the board and the commissioner. Noted that we are correcting and we are answering it now. In regards to the, I have to admit, the commissioner and the central office has the attrition of change of management. So the institutional knowledge of individuals that have transpired moving out in and out of any offices within PSS is not an excuse for me to sit here and say that the incorrect reporting and information is given out and the answers to all of you today. However, I want also to answer that the budget that the director of finance is reporting is actually Secretary Atalik is correct. His office has written to the commissioner, former commissioner, and the current commissioner that they will reduce the current budget of 2019 to 2020. Correct? Yeah. And we will get the actual revenue transferred rather than the appropriation. So we were running on appropriation for PSS, and PSS did not cut or reduce any salaries until late June, I believe. June. But that talk from the executive branch with the Secretary of Finance was advised to PSS in February of this year. 2019. So I want to commend all of you for really supporting PSS. But I want to also say, as Chemo's logo say, I'll take the blame, or it is my fault that these reportings right now are so incorrect. And all of the transfers that from the supplemental, the 400 from Rhoda and the Tinian has been transmitted. And if that funds was not used for that project, we will respond to that. And if the commissioner has requested for that funds to be used for something else, I did inform them with his team that it needs to be a letter to be requested to the House and the Senate for that bill to be revised. Once again, committee and chair, I really apologize for the incorrect answers and whatnot. There have been a transition. That's no excuse, but this is so, it really bothers me because it really paints a picture that no one is supporting PSS. Or we're sitting here, PSS is started telling that the administrator or the Secretary of Finance has not worked with us. But they have. One. Number two, we cleared out the FY 18 and 19 fiscal year. Also, they've worked with us in regards to the GLHI. As Secretary said, they did, and we did sat down with the Secretary of Finance, Mr. Tenorio was there, and the Commissioner, that we will offset the $6 million that we owe Finance, because Finance have been paying for the public school system, health, GLHI, and the life insurance because of the transfer. And we all know that the economic downfall with tourism, with the COVID, has impacted the revenue for the cinema as well as the public school system. That was known, and that was given notice to the public school system. And once again, I apologize for the incorrect reporting or the incorrect, and maybe next time this is not, I know we're live and whatnot, but it's so, embarrassing. But for the record, I want it to be known that the administration and the Secretary of Finance, since day one of 2019, when the economic was going down, they have informed us that there'll be a revised budget, the first revised budget and the second revised budget. PSS was running on an appropriation. Appropriation, forgive me for my language, but it's paper money, correct? Actual revenue receiving from finance to PSS is actual cash. It's different.
Thank
I am
you.
sorry for being
Thank you.
firm, and Chair, I apologize to keep raising my hand because I want to correct the record and have the record straight. And
Thank you, Madam Chair. And
yes,
we heard you, and I appreciate the
I
candid.
am not mad. I'm just
No,
frustrated.
that's okay.
And I'm really embarrassed that my team, sit here and we sound like we don't know what we're doing or they don't know what they're doing. But I apologize because there have been a transition of administration within the public school system. But it is, like I said earlier, I'm leaving and I want to put a legacy, that a footprint, that everything will be straight. And for the record, fiscal year 19 and 20, ending 9/30, which is my birthday, will be smooth. Right, Secretary Dave?
I hope so.
Thank you, Chair.
I think, Madam Chair, we appreciate your statement, and need not worry about what transpired already. That's why we're here to understand where we're at. Um, the objective of this committee is to really get more understanding as to how we got here. As far as what transpired, we understand that. And, Senator JQ still has the floor. As chair, I sometimes interject.
I have two more questions.
Okay, but I want to say this, Senator JQ, in the interest of time. After your question, I want to take a 5-minute break for everyone to stretch, and then we'll come right back.
Okay.
I'm going to ask the. Proceed, Madam Chair. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. With all due respect, the 28 million that right now we're asking is really, I commend the commissioner and his team for doing that. Because of the 40 million that we're asking and we're going down to 28, we are leveraging off federal funds. So we would appreciate the 28 million because we don't want to sound greedy and let the other government agencies also be heard as well as the legislature. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me. Senator Kiruga, thank you so much for your question.
Okay, Senator Q, yours. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want everybody to understand that, we're trying to sort the information out because the presentation and the documents submitted are not jiving. And what the Secretary was saying, we didn't know the negotiation between you guys and us over here. We didn't know that there was such a negotiation, and then PSS comes and reporting that they're still being owed. So we need that's a clarification now that that is put out, and now we all understand that there was a negotiation and agreed upon, and now PSS shall not continue to have their on record that we're central government still owes us so many millions of dollars. Commissioner, going back to the appropriations, I want you to review the scenario, the appropriations, especially for those with projects. And if you found out that there are projects appropriated under that appropriation that cannot move forward because of the insufficient funds, not enough to, I recommend that you do the same thing with the supplemental appropriation with PSS. Look at this and make recommendations to the chairman of SNIO and see if some of these funds can be reappropriated due to reasons based on your priorities or the lack of funding thereof that were appropriated, so that perhaps the SNIO can reconsider reappropriating us. There's a balance of $364,091 according to your record. Okay. And then my last question is on the ETC. There's a lot of money left over in under the ETC, and I'm just wondering whether the schools have any plans to use up all of these funding that they have under their account that is balanced, and so that they can do what is needed to do at the school level in terms of their needs in lieu of insufficient funds from both federal and local. And you know, there's a bill on repealing ETC, and if the legislature continues to see this money being donated and not being actually fully used by the schools, it might not be a good reflection to you know, especially the businesses who are contributing, and they still can see that some schools, they have like almost 20,000, 12,000, 17,000 sitting in their account. So please, Commissioner, talk to your school principals and see how they can use these funds. I understand that all the ETC donations go to the schools for their own use and not used by central office, but central office keeps the accounting of it. So please ask the school principals to look at their balance, and if these are for the kids, they make sure that they use this money as intended. So with that, Mr. Chairman and PSS, thank you. There are times when we ask questions that are uncomfortable, but this is part of our job here. We cannot proceed with, especially with appropriations, if we don't understand what's going on within the departments. The only way to really have a better idea, and the Senate is always supporting education. Since I came to the Senate, I never, in my time in the Senate accepts what the House recommended. We always look at ways to see if we can provide additional funds to PSS. So that's why when it comes to budget, we need to clarify things. Particularly me, I base myself on what was provided to us. And as a matter of fact, the chairman was just asking Dave this morning, is that from PSS? And Dave said, yes. So I said, well, we'll take PSS because they gave it to us. So maybe this is their record. It's coming from their record. So if questions are asked, just to clarify, I hope PSS understands that that we are just trying to be clear, because see, now some of these things that happen, we didn't know. I personally don't know anything that happened between finance and the reason why I raised it up, because the director of finance from PSS, they still owe us. Okay, so good thing I brought it up, and now we clear the record that there's no actually owing from central government to PSS, because there was a deal that was struck, and that took care of PSS for that particular negotiation that happened. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I thank you very much, and Chair, I thank you. Secretary, also thank you for bringing out the negotiation that happened. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator JQ. And I do know that I think it's important that we take a 5-minute break, and then when we get back, I would recognize a couple other members. No? So a 5-minute break. Please, let's return back by 3:35. Thank you. Okay, may I ask everyone to please take your seats? And again, before we proceed, kindly put your cell phones on silent mode. May I ask everyone to please take your seat? Thank you. Yeah. And again, just gonna remind everyone that the this meeting is being aired live, and we are back into our budget meeting, and the chair recognizes Senator Cruz to pose his question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I almost forgot my question and concern when you call 5 minutes break. But let me just check my note whether it's still there. Commissioner, I know that there's about 751 terminated or furlough, no? How many in Tinian? How many furlough or terminated in Tinian?
Nobody was terminated. Well, 717 were.
No, in Tinian. How many?
From
is there any
Tinian,
furlough or terminated in Tinian?
I know our HRO director will have that because she has all the breakdown for 3 islands.
The response to that question is close to 40.
40 in Tinian?
Total. For Tinian, yes.
How many again?
Total 40.
40? Oh, okay. And in regards to this locally funded and then transferred to federal funded, I know that it's stated on our handout or this teachers principles. And this, can you be specific? What are these support staff? Are these the support staff
So
that have been transferred to federally funded?
if I may, the support staff that have been transferred to the federal in preparation for the planning and of the opening of the school year 2021, were basically mostly the central office essential that is necessary to operate the for payroll, HR, procurement offices, as well as the school principals and the school registrars.
So the terminated or furlough staff are their teachers or their bus drivers or maintenance? What are those
So
positions?
the furloughed employees consist of different groups of classifications and positions that were furloughed. The majority were in our, so majority of our staff locally funded are teaching. We have close to 200 some support staff total. So inclusive of everybody, which is the teachers, the teacher aides, instructors, librarians, school counselors, building maintenance, bus drivers, school aides, library aides, truant officers. Those are inclusive of the 717. So the list that I provided, basically given the breakdown of what those positions are mainly, and then all the other support staff covers like the bus drivers, school aides, library aides.
Thank you for that, for clarifying that. And Commissioner, I know that you mentioned earlier about the 60,000 for the amphitheater. I know that you mentioned that it's not even enough for the ANA. The reason why we appropriate that 60,000 is just to help out, because the parents and students, and I believe some of the teachers, the PTSA, they were doing fundraising, and they brought this concern and attention to us. That's why we appropriate under local appropriation. We sacrifice some of the municipal scholarship, medical referral, because just to provide a little funding. But that doesn't mean that when we appropriate 60,000, that means for the entire. So we were hoping that maybe the 6,000 can help out in the the funding that is really needed for the amphitheater. Just to clarify that. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm still supporting like what my colleague floor leader was saying earlier, that we have different views on when it comes to budget. I think the Senate is just like the Salvation Army, that when it comes to the necessity, we're the one that know getting all the. I know we're getting all the blame, but at the end of the day, you know, it's good for everyone. So that's the role of the Senate. We're always one heart, one pace, and we move forward for helping even not PSS but the rest of the community. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman Cruz. And now I recognize the Vice Chair for the Fiscal Affairs, Senator Iggy Sumar.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And PSS, thank you very much in looking over the materials you guys submitted. It's beautiful. Aside from the initial documents, the pre-documents you sent over, your presentation is beautiful. It looks like you already got everything aligned, opening aligned for these pandemic recommendations. But just a quick question, has the task force authorized PSS to proceed?
Yes, the task force, led by Chairman Warren Villagomez, has taken a look of our opening guide, reopening guide, and we kept going back and forth. So yes, the answer is yes. He has taken a look and approved it.
Thank you very much. Now, on your request of funding from Tinian and Rhoda, but a question on these accounts that you're thinking about this project, are these new accounts, new homes, new add-ons to have internet for the MiFi, Wi-Fi data tethering?
These are the unanticipated costs for COVID-19 to make sure that remote learning takes place throughout this year.
Yes,
So
yes, I understand the situation. I'm just wondering whether you're trying to provide this program to new account internet holders or current holders, because in this idea, I believe that we have people that have internet,
correct.
and the people that have internet a lot of them are in poverty or challenged, and that they're doing the best they could to have them. And I'm wondering whether there may be a potential policy issue of you just giving certain individuals to have access instead of possibly having access available to everybody and supplemental to those that already have that qualified for some sort of poverty scenarios.
It's gonna be regulated with the MiFis. We're doing a whitelist which blocks off social media, downloading of movies and Netflix. So we anticipate that families they're gonna go ahead and take this, but they're probably gonna keep their other DSL line that's open and free at their own will.
So I'm just thinking, not to intrude, but maybe possibly using this as an option, alternative option for them to hook up, just in case they think that you're segregating others and only a few will get it, and it's not fair to everyone to benefit from a PSS program. So the other one is, I understand that you are talking about these fundings, but Secretary of Finance, by any chance, do we have, considering this is a pandemic COVID issue, and it's responding to COVID issue, do we have some sort of opportunities within your CARES Act or whatever programs federal you may be receiving with respect to the COVID that we can use to provide such programs that is really needed in PSS, aside from, because I'm sure that Tinian and Rhoda, for example, they're totally challenged right now, very challenged. And I'm sure that the senators and the delegations from Tinian and Rhoda can find other opportunities to use those funds to take care of the island if we are able to garner some sort of support from you and the CARES fundings, if possible.
Thank you, Senator. As far as the Corona relief funds that we received as a state, we've allocated now up to $500,000 for each municipality, and that has been transferred for their use. As far as the other departments and areas, we only received $36 million. Out of the CARES Act also, PSS received $23 million. And so I understand they had other obligations to pay, and that was helpful. And like they said, it was a godsend. The $36 million was also a godsend for our government. And so, as you know, or have you been aware, we've already have expenditures of over $56 million dealing with this COVID, and $36 million was only received. And so therefore, in light of saying there's no funds available to offer these services, that's why I believe the PSS and NMC received a total of $28 million to help with this issues of remote learning, which is specific on that grant that they received, to purchase laptops, iPads, whatever means to help their students get remote learning due to the pandemic, and to use those funds to also include, if I may say, private schools, because the students are not just all at PSS. We have about 2,000 students in private schools that these funds were supposed to also assist. And the same message I said to NMC is there are other higher ed institutions that you need to reach out and share some of these funds to help them. But I don't control those funds. I control the $36 million, and like I said, we have already accumulated $56 million to take care of this mitigation of this pandemic, and we still continue. And this $36 million is supposed to last to December 30. As you can see, we're still spending a lot of money keeping our borders free from this COVID, and to this date, we're still spending, and it's worrisome coming from my office in how to balance the funds that we have, how much we're going to get reimbursed by FEMA, and the more important question is, when are we going to receive this reimbursements? To this date, we're still trying to receive, monies from you two. Imagine this COVID. And so it's a big juggling act for myself, but I'll do the best that I can and balance not only current government operations, but the cost to mitigate the current pandemic we're in. I hope that answered your questions, Senator.
Thank you, Secretary. And Commissioner, I really like that idea as well. And hope you can look into these opportunities. I mean, if we have to look into those areas, then we want maybe a communication to our chairman formalizing this your project of your intention, so that we can be prepared to see how we can assist financially for our children. Now, Ms. Vicky, the COFA and the tobacco fund, those funds, when we appropriate them in the budget, for example, Public Law 21-8, the fiscal year 2020 budget, when we appropriated those funds were already here with us, or were those anticipated revenues into the future?
Those were anticipated revenues for the future, and again, the calculation is based on the percentage of services to FAS citizens.
Yeah, yes.
So it's triggered by by the percentage of service.
Yes, I understand. We used to work together. Well, you did the work and then you tasked it to us, and we end up doing it. And so we do the monkeying job. And I understand that. That's why I'm asking whether we receive it already or it's anticipated into the future. And the reason why I asked that is because of the funds we're questioning with PSS, whether they've received the funds or not. And I believe Secretary did respond that it's forthcoming, right, Secretary? The tobacco settlement, at least?
The Tobacco Settlement Fund, and to answer Senator JQ, we did receive $544,000 this fiscal year, and so I asked my staff to prepare the preparation of the
20%?
to the different agencies or areas that will be receiving these funds. As far as the to answer your question on the tobacco funds.
Okay. And Ms. Vicky, the reason I'm also asking about the COFA is the COFA that we allocated, I know you did the formula and you identified the formula percentage allocation to each of the agencies that were identified as per Interior and with your office, but we allocated under 21-8 as a budget act. If indeed the whole amount was given to NMC, would that be needed of a memo to the legislature informing us that there has been a change in the COFA allocation?
So we were given notice by the Office of Insular Affairs that the CNMI will be receiving about 2.3 million in COFA for FY 2020. However, when we prepared the plan and submitted it to OIA, they came back. Mr. Nick Pula, the director of OIA, sent an email to the governor, informing the governor that the U.S. Census made an error in the allocation of funding for the compact, for FY 2020. So they needed to make an adjustment. So everything is held back except the 750,000 that was released, which was given to NMC. So we're still waiting for whatever the end result is from, a thorough analysis of what the Census Bureau had reported versus what OIA had released. So there will be an adjustment. It's either an upward adjustment or a downward adjustment. But I know that the CNMI will get more than 750,000. So we're just waiting.
So Vicky, maybe we can have a discussion later, but I'm just wondering that the funds given to NMC, we understand the situation, we understand the crisis. Look, considering the itemization and the allocation percentage to all the other entities, I'm just wondering whether NMC getting that money is NMC's share of the projected funds to be released, or is NMC given an advanced share of up to 2 to 3 years from that 700,000?
That is more than the share that will be allocated to the Northern Marianas College. However, the governor has that, has that option to reallocate how the percentage came about.
All right, thank you. And as you understand, my question is on the budget itemized allocation. That is an act versus the maneuver of the funds. So, just to finance, what's the budget for PSS on the revised submitted?
For 2021,
Yes, sir.
it's about 19 million.
So it's exactly as, 19 million. And then PSS, how did you derive to 28 million? Well, I'm saying this because I'm also reading our chairwoman's thoughts and mentality. Not mentality, but thoughts on the issue. And I'm at the same time thinking about the budget that we received here back on April, the funding of PSS, the amount of funds. And I believe that this is just a budget outlay of the expense and the revenues. And I see that there is a potential of $7.5 million shortage as of April. Yes, right? And so our thoughts, because we don't run PSS, we understand it more, how is PSS operating at already in the red of 7.5 million and budget-wise? And I know Secretary is allocating the funds necessarily on a monthly basis. And I'm trying to find ways how to help PSS, whether you're still in the red. So as of today, are you in the red today, budget-wise and cash flow actual-wise?
We survived, PSS survived with supplemental from Education Stabilization Fund.
Okay, so that's what helped.
That's
I figured.
how we survived.
Thank you very much. And so with the federal funding that you're receiving, Mr. Thornburg, the local matching, is there any form of local matching on PSS federal grants that you receive?
If you're asking Education Stabilization Fund, the answer is no. If you're asking for consolidated grant, the answer is no. For the formula grants, the answer is no. But for all other grants, yes, there is a match.
And so in those grant match, understanding that the local matching, for those that you say there is it significant or just nominal?
It's about a little over $4 million.
And so in that 4 million, who is obligated to recognize that as a local match to take care of PSS or the general fund?
PSS does that, and we do that through the budget that we submit to you annually.
Okay, so knowing that the Secretary of Finance saying that we have $19 million and you're asking for $28 million.
Okay, let me, I think you were not here earlier when I spoke on this subject, so we did. And back in March, we submitted a budget of $40 million. but when the economy went into the tailspin with, the COVID, we knew that we had a responsibility to reduce our costs. So we reduced the salaries of all PSS employees. That was a $6 million reduction. That takes us from 40 to 34. Then we are carrying forward about $6 million education stabilization funds. So subtract 6 million from 34, that gets you to 28. But I can tell you right now, we need 28. And I think it was, very good that, both the board chair and the commissioner said, hey, look, this we got to all pitch in together, and we think we've done our part. We've come up with 12 million. That's a significant reduction.
Yes, I understand. I've read over the documents and do see the breakdown. And my thought is on this $28 million, 19 from the administration, and you're asking for 28, so that's a big gap. So it's just a matter of us to try and work together and see how we can help the House find this fund. Secretary.
I just want to say the $19 million is 25% of our available general revenues. We're only budgeting or projecting $77 million for general revenue. 25% of that is to PSS. And so overall budget for next fiscal year is $144 million. Take off all our debts in the settlement fund, it leaves us with about $77 million to distribute to the whole government, including PSS, which we gave them 25% of that. That's how that figures there.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up because I know we're here for the children and we're here for PSS, and I know that there was a comment out there that we will adjust accordingly as we get what we get. And so what I'm trying to also state for all of us to be responsible and to be aware is that there is a $19 million projected by the administration based on that 25%, as our secretary is saying. And I know that we need to operate at 34 minus the federal funding support down to 28, and that we have that big gap that we need to deal with. And so I hope that we'll be able to find ways to help each other out and to be able to move the entire government and the education of our children as well. And the last comment I have is, I don't know if this is like a redacting methodology that PSS has, but don't worry, you're not the only one. And you sent us a document, and our chairman wanted me to state it. There's this document with font size .001, I think. In the insurance documents of contracts, the minimum font size should be no less than 10. I think this is .001 font. So please, next time, when you provide your elderly senators, elderly, please give us a little bigger font. Otherwise, see, my bifocal doesn't even work on the .001 font. So with that, I want to thank you guys. Thank you for coming today. And I'll yield my turn back to the chairman. Just Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Isomor. I do know that Senator Santos has yet to post her question, so at this time, the chair recognizes the good senator from Rhoda, Senator Santos.
Thank you, Chair. Originally, I have several questions, but through questions raised by the members, I only have a few. And so my first question, I would like to refer it over to the commissioner. And I know that several of the members had already asked this question, but I just wanted to know the percentage. And so you stated that an assessment or a survey has already been conducted on the first and second senatorial districts to determine the student need for internet data, connectivity, or Chromebook services. And so may we know the percentage of each of these senatorial districts where students require this service or these services?
I have to say that I did not disaggregate that data. It was collective of all the 3 islands schools. So I can get back to you on that for Rhoda.
Very good, thank you. And so my next question, Commissioner, may we know if there's any federal funds from the CARES Act that the PSS has received or entitled to receive for technology or equipment, which funds can be utilized for this purpose, the connectivity, the Chromebook, data, internet services, if there is?
There is. Again, it's the Education Stabilization Fund. Also, our consolidated grant allows for this too. So we have a couple of sources that we can tap, and that's why we have invitations for bid and RFPs that are out right now.
So we do not know the specific amount, or is it just an estimate?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, if you want to know the number of MiFis, we're looking at least 3,000 MiFis. The Chromebooks is 5,000. But in addition to that, we have over 12,000 devices that we have given iPads and laptops to our public and private schools, with the goal that there would be at least one device per student, per classroom, per school.
So Tim, I'm referring to the federal funds. How much federal funds does PSS stand to receive or has already received for that purpose?
Okay, for the Education Stabilization Fund, it's 23.1 million.
All right, thank you.
So if I may, I just want to give you a breakdown for COVID-19 supplies. This is for each child. So for COVID-19 supplies, it's 4,129. For Wi-Fi, 360. And for Chromebooks, each Chromebook is about $400. When you total all that up, it's 4,889, close to 5,000 additional per child with COVID-19. That's why I said that our numbers, we need 1.9 million to supplement these. And ESF with the stabilization fund is helping, but he cannot dedicate all that for this.
Okay, so considering the number of students that would be requiring these services through the survey or the assessment that the commissioner you have conducted, do we have the necessary funds to accommodate those?
We're trying our very best. So we know that 6,000 need the MiFi, so we're procuring 3,000. So we're short 3,000. For the supplies, we've procured mask and sanitation and gloves and all that. We have enough to start, but we don't have enough to carry through the year. We're tapping all kinds of funds right now.
So we do have the funds to begin, but as we go along, we may be short of funds.
That's why, yeah, with the 28 million, we can possibly survive with that. We will make do with our the best that we can.
I see. So, yeah, so is there any other sources of revenue that perhaps the public school system can identify to be able to, satisfy this?
Thank you, Senator. Tim, can you please clarify? Thank you.
Yes, sure. Basically, we're looking at that there may be an education stabilization part 2. We just have to wait and see whether Congress can work this out or not, and if not, then we have to go with what we have. But what I want to do is point out that we are spending an estimated $5 million on Chromebooks, MiFis, and the sanitation supplies for our schools. And again, we've costed this out based on the Cagman Elementary School summer school, and it works out to about $4,100 per classroom is what it works out to. So if you got a school, if you have 30 classrooms, multiplied by 4,100, it's going to work out to about 120,000. If you've got 1,600 students, like Mariana's High School, it's a much, much bigger number. So it depends on the number of students and number of classrooms at your school. But overall, for our public and private schools, it'll easily be $5 million.
Chair, if I may, Senator. To answer, I wear two hats, right? So in regards to connectivity, I know for ITNE as well as probably Docomo has for ITNE, we have both all islands, Rhoda, Saipan, and Tinian, free internet services to the Community and Youth Services Center. What I can do is go back to ITNE and we can extend the internet to the access point so they can access it to the parking lot. Our schools also is working on that, correct, Commissioner? In regards to the internet connectivity within the campuses, both for all islands, is within the campuses already, but it's really connected in the building. What we need to do is that what they're currently working now with the schools is to have a connectivity to access it outside the building. That makes it giving it more higher speed and accessibility to the outside parking lot area. So students and students can come and park their cars and whatnot to still keep the social distancing and the congregation of students and whatnot within their cars. With the youth services, Commissioner, I believe we've been working with the DCCA and the government executive branch in regards to have the community's youth center open so we can start having these students come in and do work enhancement, rather educational enhancements and whatnot, because they've been out of school quite long. And the other thing that I want to say is that both providers, ITNE and Docomo, has the low income lifeline program. It's federally funded, and we pay. They get 10%, I believe, off from the internet services. For Rhoda and Tinian, they can go on wireless, and for Rhoda and Tinian, I know that ITNE has enhanced its services and whatnot. For Saipan, all areas in Saipan have been enhanced in regards to the wireless accessibility. So that as well, students can avail, because I know Vice Chair 62, right? Sorry, Senator, had mentioned about the fair of criteria of all students that will avail to it. And I think the low income life program that both providers have, families can avail to that, so we can have criterias for them to be given. So if you're low income, and how they qualify is that if you have Medicaid or food stamp, you will automatically qualify for the lifeline. That will also be a supplemental what do you call it, supplemental fund from the family and from PSS for the internet services, be wireless or home internet fiber. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chair, for that information. Commissioner and Tim, maybe this is one issue that maybe we may be able to, we may want to revisit in the future in the event that, the funds is not there to be able to carry on this connectivity or a service. And so, Tim, you mentioned that an RFP has already been issued for deep cleaning and sanitizing of all the classrooms and the buildings. Has an RFP already been released for Rhoda and Tinian, considering, the remoteness of these islands and cleaning services not being very popular? We clean after our own act, and so has that been issued? Has an RFP already been issued?
Yeah, the RFP is for the cleaning supplies, and for all the different supplies that has been issued. It closes. We're going to open it tomorrow, so that's where we are on the sanitation supplies for all of our schools.
So you're talking about supplies and not the services. I don't think we have cleaning services on Rhoda, and so or I'm not too sure if the island of Tinian does have cleaning services, but Rhoda does not have. And
Okay.
so would it be prudent to execute this RFP so that whoever's interested may start maybe obtaining be planning to be submitting for a bid.
Okay. What I can tell you with absolute certitude is that the cleaning supplies we have, if you don't have a company to do the deep cleaning, then we can figure that one out as well too, because there are 2 or 3 companies here on island at least that are doing it on Saipan. So it might be possible to get them to come to Rota, and if not, then we'll have to figure out, okay, how are we going to do this together? And that's where we are on that. But the deep cleaning really is to take care of really the mold, bacteria, things that have built up across 6 months when schools were closed. And you do it one time and you're good for the rest of the year. But then daily, the schools need to be cleaning. And if you're doing like a session and a B session, before the A students come in, you clean. Before the B students come in, you'll clean and sanitize again in your classroom. And this is how it works, and it was very, very successful at Cagman Elementary School. So it's a good model. We made a little 5-minute movie out of it and shared it with our board, with all of our principals, and so it gave them a really good idea of, hey, here's how you do it. And once you can see it, it's easy to execute.
Okay, so that RFP is going to be released tomorrow for all the 3 senatorial districts.
It's an RFP for the entire public school system, and it will be open tomorrow, and we'll see what kind of bids we get.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner, earlier you indicated that students will be provided instructional or instructions online using the Blackboard Ultra. Is that more effective or efficient versus the Google Classroom? And why Blackboard Ultra?
Because it's the program that we have been using for distance education prior to COVID-19. It's the platform that we use for our AP Institute and for our high school courses. It's been over 5 years, I believe, that we've used the Blackboard Ultra. So for the continuity of learning, we felt that the Blackboard Ultra was the best option for now. So
Good, thank you. And so, we heard over and over regarding the 28 million that the public school system is requesting for fiscal year 2021.
Yes.
And you indicated that would bring back all our teachers with the 64 hours bi-weekly. Does that also include the support staff?
Yes.
Yes.
So there's the school-based personnel. We still need those truant officers at the secondary level. We still need the secretaries to come back to help us with operation of the school zone. Because the plan is we are going to offer face-to-face only for 10 or less students per teacher, per course, per class, every day. So 10 or less students each. Let's say in second grade there's 4 sections. So you've got 40 second grade students who will be on campus for 2 hours to have that face-to-face service, and then they go home. And the rest is remote learning.
Very good. And so my last question, Mr. Commissioner, one of the school safety measures indicated that there's going to be an isolation room in each schools.
Yes.
Is that in the works for Rodentinian schools?
Oh, yes.
Okay, good. And we pray that none of our students will be,
These are
will contract this COVID virus. But in the event that there is, then you will be closely coordinating this with the COVID task force.
Yes.
Or would it be the same protocol as, adults and correct?
Yes, yes. We will bring in the COVID task force to go through inspection. That's what we did with Kapmang Elementary. They were there and they approved everything that we showcased at the school site.
Very good. And so, we recognize that there's going to be a lot of adjustments, maybe some inconveniences for students, our public school system, our parents, our community with this online learning. But nevertheless, we have the greatest confidence that the public school system will be able to carry, this program just great, with a very high success rate, just like, students going to school physically. And so with that, we will continue to pray for the public school system.
Thank you, Chair, if I may, add the comment to your statement, Senator. Yes, currently we have the teachers are being trained in regards to the, because like you said, the technology nowadays is intimidating to a lot of the families. They're not used to the the internet or the laptops or the iPads and whatnot. But I assure you that the teachers are currently under training to even, like I said earlier, to mention the mental health to the students and emotional and their educational growth in regards to development, rather, in regards to how they would take in the curriculum, instructional curriculum via virtual, as well as coming into the campuses in a safely manner. So the teachers are also being trained in that, I assure you. We've done a lot of professional development for our administrators and teachers, and they're well trained in regards to that area. And I want to acknowledge and kudos to the commissioner and his team in regards to that manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I yield for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Santos. I wanted to have the members to forgive me that I'm going to pose my question now. I gave the members some time to ask first, second, and I'll recognize again. We still got about 2 hours to go before the daylight ends. But I appreciate the, the understanding with the members. Just quickly, maybe Commissioner or HR Director, can you please clarify on the 80 hours versus the 64 hours personnel that I heard earlier? And what's the sentiment like with the administration of PSS and the board as far as the optics of some that are getting 80 and some that are getting 64? And I'm referring to the morale issue of the employees.
If I may, Chair, I just want, if you're asking for the morale of our staff, faculty and staff of PSS, no matter how you do it, how you look at it, how you implement it, there is inequity across the board. And so we try to make them understand why, the rationale, why 80 and some 64. With the 80, those are the federally funded staff being used by indirect costs, or some of the grants.
Is it 100%
does
federally funded?
require some of the grants. There's 29 total grants, and some of them have different requirements.
This just
Now,
teachers also
Well,
included?
federally funded programs like Head Start, which is highly regulated, and also special education. So we need to use up the funds. If we don't, then it's going to show surplus. And on our next fiscal year proposal, they're going to see that there is that surplus, and they're probably going to decrease the funding.
Understood.
You understand that, right?
Yeah.
So we explain that to our staff, and that with the 64 is because of the economic crisis, the financial factors, forces that are really forcing us to adjust. And we lesson learned. We don't want to go back to that pay less payday, or to do furlough again and left with nothing.
May I ask this though, on the grants that you guys are using to match to get your full 80 hours? Is that the formula grant that Mr. Thornburg was referring to, or is there any flexibility to that effect where you can spread it out?
And answer that.
I'm just concerned about the appearance that we expect 90-hour effort from a teacher who's getting 64 hours paid, and they're only getting paid 64 hours. Understanding fully the funding situation, but I'm just a little bit concerned about the presentation of that.
Yeah, so every time we do have, sorry, every time we do some cuts, we make sure that their load of work, of roles and responsibility is adjusted as well. So with the 64 hours, it's 4 days a week, and teachers can teach remotely from home, and they have to report to class, to the school, either way. Versus the 80 hours, they have 5 days a week, get 80 hours, and they have to produce.
Well, I just want to bring that up.
Oh, yeah.
I understand, and I'm not trying to compel you guys to change your stance, but I'm just cautioning the decision. But we will run with your recommendation and take it under consideration with this committee, with the budget. But I want to move ahead with that.
I think Tim
question.
was supposed to answer one
Yeah.
of the questions.
Is it
Yeah.
related to?
Yeah, it's just related to that. We have, for example, if teachers are only working and most of the support staff 4 days a week, the federally funded staff will be working 5 or 6 days a week. In other words, on Friday, when everyone's off, there can still be teachers at the school that are doing some remediation with students. They can be doing sports, they can be doing wellness, and they can do it on Saturday too, and we'll pay them a pay differential for that. So there are means. We're going to make sure that we get the maximum effort for the compensation. Ideally, we'd like to have everyone on 80 hours, but it just, it's not quite possible right now. But in the future, I'm sure we will revert back to that. But in the interim, this is what we're doing. Over.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you. Over. But I guess the reason why I asked this question is you guys are the experts of this with the grants and the education stabilization funds, and you guys go in, year out, and I'm confident that with your justification as to the tailspin of the economy, maybe it's going to compel you guys to even justify it further if you guys can do flexibility on those funds. I'm sure you guys probably know the granting agency how to do that. So perhaps instead of 164 and the other 80, just spread it out and make it 72 everyone across the board, if that's permissible. But I'm just looking at on the perspective of the optics of the way that it's presented. I'm just concerned that some that are getting 80 and a lot are getting 64. It's concerning. And as chair of this budget hearing, I want to raise that up to you guys, and maybe in the midst, moving forward, you can have a look at it again and see if something can be tweaked to the upside, or a little more funding stream perhaps in the beginning. I mean, in the midst of the fiscal year. But I want to move forward with that. How, with regards to teacher salaries, without having the complete package, correct me if I'm wrong. So we gave them salary reduction first. Did we get the teachers with salary reduction?
I'm going to yield to Miss Lucrecia Borja.
Yeah, and I'm talking about general fund, no? Did a salary reduction on teachers?
All right, so the salary reduction actually first took place last year, June, when we had to implement the cuts.
Is it across the board?
Yes.
Equitable? Is it 5% of everybody?
The percentage is a little bit different from position classifications, but the reduction is the 50% rate between the old compensation and the new compensation. So that was the reduction last year, June. And then this year, March was implemented the 64-hour austerity.
Can you clarify those two you just mentioned? Last year's class schedule or salary schedule versus this?
So let's say for example, this is an example. So, starting salary of a teacher is at 33,000 for the October 2017 compensation plan. The old compensation plan prior to that, the starting salary of a teacher is 30,000. So the difference between the two, which is about 1,000 something, take that in addition to the old compensation, that's where we derive where the salary reduction amount would be. So that's where their cut is.
Okay, I'm sorry, Ms. Borja, can you repeat it talo?
Okay.
So the old salary scale
On the old scale,
pre 2017 is 30,000 salary for teacher one.
yes, correct.
And of that, what percentage did we adjust downward?
So 50% between the old compensation and the new compensation.
15?
50, 50. That's the example.
Okay, so 50% of the difference between 30 and 33.
Yeah, so about 3,000.
Okay. So can you just use that teacher example and come up with real figures now with what you guys did? Where they at today?
32,000.
So they're 32,000 everyone?
No, not everyone. Our teacher scale falls from a basic 1, a basic 2, a standard and professional, and depending on what certification you hold, the degree you have, and the years of service of teaching. That is our current compensation. That's how it's the minimum qualification requirement for that specific class.
So in a range between 5% to 15% variation, 5% to 7%, where are we at?
About 5 to 15%, depending on which certification level you fall, what degree you have attained, and how many years of teaching.
So with having said that, then you take them down to another 16 hours.
That is correct.
So where are they at now? The 32 then 16?
32,000 less 64 hours. I don't have the figure right now, but it's 20%.
That's significant, no?
20% of
So-
the 32,000.
Okay. So can you provide this committee, maybe not today, detailed information as to, can you articulate the very question that I asked? Which or how or the bottom line for these a particular group of teachers, you know?
Yes.
Because I fully understand the issue with funding stream and all, but here we are trying to implement them to adapting to a new mode of teaching requirement. I don't know what it takes because I'm never a teacher, but that's why I got full respect to all teachers because they have the biggest patience ever. But I'm just concerned that you know, with the reduction and the level of expectation that we allow, we ask them for them to undertake for the next when we resume in September 8 is taxing for them too. Commissioner, is there anything you want to share with that example? No, same example.
Perhaps maybe the detail, I will do a breakdown.
It doesn't have to
and
be
then-
names. It can be just teachers specifically, and what you just shared to the committee of how you guys did the calculation for a reduction is exactly what we need so that we can be able to understand it further. No,
Noted.
thank you.
We'll provide it.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Senator. Yeah. Okay. My next question is so when is the deadline for the? Sorry, I kind of just gonna mix my question. But when is the deadline for the registration for this school year? Because there's a date for when to register, but there's no deadline.
No, there is 30 days after the school opens.
Okay.
So they have up until 30 days to register and get their health certification. So
Okay.
actually, registration is open all year long. I was trying to think. I was thinking of the online registration right now
Mhm.
that is ongoing. It is with conjoined with public health immunization, the health. So we're working side by side with them to help the families.
Okay, thank you. Okay, to the earlier statement by Mr. Thornburg regarding the nurses, the needed. What's the minimum criterion you require? Any? Can you just be an entry level just to?
Yeah, it certainly could be entry level, but again, we really thought that we would be able to get some retired nurses to come and work, part time, or some nursing assistants, and we even had two firms on island that work just on recruiting nurses and hospital personnel. They tried and finally came back and said no.
So these are the ones that you require for them to be on campus.
Absolutely, we would want them on campus. Absolutely.
Okay. So basically, just to make sure that somebody gets hurt, they tend to them for the. I'm driving.
Yeah,
I'm driving my next comment.
It's first of all, to make certain that all of our staff, each time they come on campus, we get a temperature check. They're okay. And then our students, same thing. Even the students get temperature checked before they get on the bus. It's to make certain everyone is healthy when they come on campus. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Thornburg. I guess the reason why I'm asking because over the last 2 to 3 to 4 years, we've been front loading a lot of FTEs for Department of Fire and Emergency Management, and a lot of these DFEMS folks are very well trained on EMTs and all that to respond to those. Have you guys ever thought of possibly working with DFEMS to see if you can use some of their well-trained employees to fill the gaps? Maybe share some of the funds that you, instead of hiring full-time.
That is a good idea. We're still exploring right now. As of yesterday, our management team were looking at the students of NMC that are in the nursing program, and perhaps if they are,
You're going to
they
be
need-
battling with CHC.
they need to do practicum work they can use they can use them at a school.
Hmm.
So we're not gonna stop exploring. We're gonna keep doing, but DFEMS is definitely
Yeah, I mean,
a good choice.
right. And I think I'm looking at, they've actually recruited some under Workforce Investment Agency. I'm not quite sure how many they recruited this year, and would be a good justification perhaps to Comingo that you guys need it so that they can continue getting funded from WIA so they can help the schools. Something thinking outside the box, no? Instead of continuing also to fund it with monies that are very tight now, is work with the commissioner of defense to see how we can work something like that, rotational basis, and then perhaps also check the nursing board, get guidance from them, see how we can facilitate something like this, because this is very important, and I'm happy that you guys are actually looking into that program. Yeah, did you want to say something, Mr. Thornburg?
Yeah, back in the early 1990s, we had a nurse at every school, and we're trying to bring that back, and it just, there's a shortage on island.
Oh, yeah, I think it's everywhere now. But okay, so Senator JQ raised an interesting question earlier in regards to some legislation here that aims to repeal the ETC. Is there a position from this from the public school system as far as that particular law?
Yeah, it's called the doctrine of unintended consequences. If you take the money, what's going to happen is, the private schools have kept their tuition at a very, very low rate for a long time, and it's because of the ETC. And Galvin and is the leader of the private schools, they will tell you this. If that goes away, tuition's going to go way up. Tuition goes way up. Families can't afford it. Where do the students go? To the public school system. And we are pretty much maxed out right now. And if we get, 1,000 out of the 2,000 private school students, we have a problem. We're not, you know, we just we don't have the resources to do that. So the other thing to remember is kind of the history on the education tax credit that began when Governor Teno was shortly after he was elected, and you know the garment factories were going down, and we had what the Korean airline plane that crashed into Guam, and then they pulled all their flights out, and so it was the way Teno explains it. One way he could help us because he had to cut our budget, but he said, hey, you know, go to the businesses, see what you can do, and it really has been very, very helpful to our students and to the private schools too. So we got to be careful about this, and if we have, you know, our schools will raise probably $250,000 a year, and with no operations money, ETC is basically their operations money. So I would ask you to please not do anything. If you want to do something with the ETC, why don't we raise the ceiling from 5 to 10,000? That would be helpful to us.
Tim, so question, what's the last few years, do you have figures as to how much are you guys receiving in ETC?
Yeah, it's over 200,000 a year.
Constantly?
Yeah.
Consistently?
And you know, excuse me, our schools go back time and time again to, you know, they know the businesses in their area, and the businesses tend to, you know, partner with the schools, and so it's a good partnership.
Consideration, I appreciate that. Please note that a lot of the policies or the plans that are being being discussed in the legislature is a result of responding to the fiscal crisis summit that we had a couple months ago, and a lot of it stands out is the suspension or the removal of earmark funds, and anything and everything that can go into the general fund, you know, we should really consider putting it into the general fund, of which 25% of that goes to PSS. So although I understand the concerns, I also wanted to ask, do you guys have statistics of migration of private school students that have gone to PSS the last 3 years?
I think we have that data. We've looked particularly at you know, new immigrants coming in, and we've seen a significant rise in Koreans, Chinese, and you know, I believe it was during Governor Fitial's time that he came up with the concept of edutourism. In other words, bring in students from the outside. They live here. They contribute to the economy. But the idea was they were supposed to go to the private schools. But once you're on island, you can go wherever you want to go. And so we get a significant number that attend our public schools as well. So it is what it is.
And that's why we're here.
And
that's why these legislations are floating.
We have those numbers, and
Yeah.
it's a concern over.
So, Mr. Commissioner, no, perhaps if you can allow some statistics based on the questions driven from the chair, we certainly appreciate it. And I think we sent out the committee sent out comments for you guys to share your concerns or of the particular legislations. Okay, Secretary, you want to chime in? Good. So I'm pleased to learn that during the course of this conversation, it's very unusual for the legislature to hear that the executive branch and PSS have actually closed the books. So it's really I commend the leadership from PSS, the board, and of course the Governor Torres and the Secretary of Finance for meeting, you know, and resolving this, as what Senator JQ was saying. we wouldn't know until we actually hear from both parties. So we hope that whatever comes out with this exercise of budget, um, we try to manage. No, 77 million. I thought 88 million. I was more ambitious than the Secretary of Finance. I thought 88 million is available for appropriation, but there's a $10 million reduction. So, but nevertheless, we will do our best, and we'll continue to seek ways to generate the necessary revenues. And I ask that you help us also lobby for revenue generating that is not necessarily consequential for the residents that are living in the CNMI that are staying here 365 days. So that we can only get better if everybody gets, we support it. To Commissioner Adas, Dr. Adas' recommendation, I wanted to let you know that it's regarding the amphitheater. No, it's actually a public law 20-68. It's a supplemental appropriation for both, and yes, it's gonna need some flexibility clause because this did not allow you to reprogram it. I repeat, it did not allow the Commissioner of Education to reprogram it for any other. So I hope the monies are still there because it's the procurement of the air cons and the amphitheater is not up yet. So okay. But before I lose my chain of thought for my next question, I think my fiscal analyst Dave wants to chime in on a couple things. Go ahead, Dave.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Commissioner, members of this PSS. I'd like to clarify the revised budget by the governor, because when the governor revised the budget, there were, I believe, 13 earmark funds that were suspended, and the effect of that 13 is about a little bit over 11 million reduction from the original amount of 24 some million. Now, furthermore, the governor reduced also the 75 payment to the settlement fund, which was about 42 million down to 41 million. So the total effect of that reduction is about a little bit over 12 million. So that increased the amount to be appropriated from this body from 70.6 million up to 82.6 million. So if you take 25% of that for PSS, that would amount to about 20.6 million. And that's the clarification there, Mr. Chairman, that I want to clarify, because right now, this body, as the budget from the governor says, is going to work on approximately 82.6 million from the general fund, not adding the DPO's portion of approximately 4.5. So overall, 87.2 million that this body will appropriate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So you want to
Just to, I don't have my documents in front of me, and going from memory, and I know our first submission, and in terms of revenue projections, I know that I'm still sticking to about 144 million, and so overall total for the CNMI, and so just doing math in my head, but thanks for the clarification.
And Secretary of Finance, I do notice that some of the recommendations by administration on possible revenue generation provision, the Senate committee is really looking at that closely. And if the Constitution allows us to embed it temporarily in the provision of the budget, we're going to certainly consider that highly. And I'm going to want to work with you and Ms. Villagomez to allow us, and if it necessitates another revised submission from the message or something to that effect. So I just want to mention that because we're all thinking cuts, but we're trying to see how we can get some revenue going so that we can meet the 28 million perhaps for PSS without any blink, and then some. But it all boils down to how well we can, cooperatively find a common ground to do just that. Um, yes. So, any other member, Senator JQ? Oh.
My my last maybe this is a comment, Commissioner. Since PSS will be reducing hours from 80 to 64, I really recommend that that communication be prepared and probably in advance and be shared with the CNMI DOL, and perhaps these employees can avail the PUA, and also will give the Secretary of DOL an opportunity to see how many of PSS will be under the 64 hour, so that she can request US DOL for additional funding for PUA.
So that's Senator. Thank you for mentioning that. I totally kind of passed my mind to. So, can the HR director please can you enlighten us again how did we work the PUA for our teachers? Because I know there's a break in the summer, no? But you guys spread the 180 days into 52 pay period, right? Or 26 pay period.
Correct.
So, but then the pandemic unemployment assistance, you had to report that you actually paid them the summer.
Correct.
So how did you guys figure it? It's very creative, but how did you guys figure it? Can you allow us to understand it?
So basically, the employees that worked a total of the 146 days out of 196 days, they got their summer pay. It's work that they've already completed. And so how that was determined through Department of Labor, we let the Department of Labor answer to our employees because we cannot answer for them. So depending on the total amount paid to them, broken down into 11, I believe it's 11 pay periods, if I'm not mistaken. If that amount is above the $494 threshold, then they will not qualify. That's based on what the information we've been receiving. So we've been working closely with Department of Labor. Any updates that relate to PUA or employment status, the Human Resources Office has made every effort. We have access to the portal, so we as an employer can go in and edit information. So now that we've reinstated these employees, we have entered this week that we've reinstated them, and in addition to that, they provided us a remark section where we indicate how many hours they will be working. So it clearly states that come October 1, it'll be 60. I mean, when they get reinstated, it'll be 64 hours.
Okay, so to the point that Senator JQ was saying, would that something that you guys can start driving the conversation with Department of Labor?
Absolutely.
So that, there's no breaking gaps, because, this is fairly new. I don't know how long the PUA is going to be, going to be available for us here. It's election year, so it's going to be available up to December. But after that, we don't know, right? So, right. So on the CARES Act, Mr. Thornburg or Commissioner, is the CARES Act of 28 million? You guys received it already, or are you receiving it as we go? Or
What we received was 23.1 million. That
Uh-huh.
was the Education Stabilization Fund that was a part of the CARES Act.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that one doesn't have any fiscal year limitation.
It can go for another year, yes.
So another 23 million next year,
Not,
or 45 million.
not yet. There's still something to be worked out between the U.S. Senate, the House, and the President, and if they work it out, and it is an election year, you're right.
Thank you.
Stay tuned.
I thought I mentioned that because there's only so much that the U.S. taxpayers can also dole out for everyone. So we just have to take that into consideration. Any other member before I close the meeting. Oh, I'm sorry, Chair Tenorio, you're very active today. I like that. You're very interactive. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Is that this is just passing for information, passing information. And Senator Kidwa, you are correct. And in regards to the reduced hours, I know a lot of government employees from the central government as well as PSS teachers that have approached me and have informed me that they have claimed the shortage hours in regards to the reduction from 80 to 64, right, Dave? I'm sorry, Secretary? And they've claimed that. So as Secretary Vicky Benavente often mentioned throughout the interview and the community awareness in regards to the Department of Labor in the portal, is that individuals should report every information that is needed from the 80 to the 64, because some of the government employees that did that, as well as the teachers that were reduced from the time, they got the payout from the PUA. Yeah, the 16 hours. So I believe that it is the individual's responsibility. However, every HR department and agency should also be, proactive in regards to that. And as you mentioned, our HO will be doing that. How I asked these individuals, how did they do it without the certification of the HR? And for PSS employees and as well as the government, they issue the letter. There's a notice, and with PSS there was an addendum, right? That PSS employees signed, as well as the government, central government was issuing a furlough or reduction of hours memo. So they actually use that as a supporting document, and I believe Department of Labor here have acknowledged that form or that letter to the individuals, and they've got the money. So that's another way to utilize an additional supplement to fill that void. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Senator?
That letter is very important because if you look at if you go into online and you are applying, it asks you to attach a documentation that reduces your hours. So without that one, you cannot go further to the next. So that's why that letter is important from the employer, that these employees were reduced by 16 hours every 2 weeks, and that the employee will have to be including that. And I went through that the portal, and you cannot move to the next step if you do not have the document supporting what you're inputting. So that's why the letter from the commissioner is very important in the 64-hour per pay period.
Thank you. Good point. Okay, and in closing, unless one more chance to the members, you guys want to say anything, or okay, good. Okay, so in closing, I hope that we're gonna be working. The committee is gonna be dedicating the month of August to work on the budget. We're hoping we'll be receiving this House version soon. But I want to ask the commissioner that I know that you look at the schools as one, no? Even though we have fragmented, islands, right? But I also would like to, I'm sure you considered it, that about merging schools, about limiting students to 10 per classroom so that they can come to the conventional going to school concept. But to me, I'm saying that up here, it's easier said than done, because you guys are looking at it every day, every night. But it is something that have been raised to my attention, to some of the educators that I run into, and some parents for that matter, that they have, because some of them are working parents, and a lot of them are working parents, and this homeschool or shelter in place school concept is it's new, and they prefer that their kids go and socialize, you know, and go to school and mingle with their friends and all. But understanding fully the seriousness and the difficulties of doing the conventional way of going to school, it's going to be a very big test for every one of us here, not just you guys. But please make sure that first the teachers and the school principals and everybody else are the frontliners now. No, it's no longer the first responders. It's going to be the frontliners, the teachers, because they're going to be, you know, presenting themselves. Now, if that should come around, whatever level that is, that's indicated in the COVID-19. But don't let this be the last meeting, Commissioner, with the Senate. If we'd have to meet every month just to air some of the concerns, you have a very effective health, education, and welfare chair. He's always very supportive of PSS, just like the rest of us. But this is just basically the budget. But you know, it's going to be a process, and I'm certain that the Secretary of Finance and Plan Management and Budget Act Special Assistant is very attentive to the needs of our school. No?
Yes,
So-
Senator, this is not going to be the last time you're going to see me. Can I come visit you tomorrow?
Absolutely.
We really need that. With 28 million for fiscal year 2021, we will be able to operate through the year with 64 hours for staff and teachers to avoid furloughs and payless payday.
Thank
So
you.
with
Thank you,
that
Commissioner.
said, thank you. This has been very, very interesting. This is my first time to ever attend a budget hearing at the
You're a
Senate.
natural.
Not when I said over earlier, unexpectedly so.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Okay, thank you. And again, on behalf of the Senate's Fiscal Affairs Committee, I want to thank you all. And with that, may I hear a motion to adjourn this budget meeting? It's been offered by Senator Vini to adjourn, seconded. Any discussion? And under discussion, I want to thank Secretary of Finance and Vicky again for being here. Please, just for everyone's, the members' information, we have DPS and DFEMS on Thursday, meeting at 9:30 in the morning and 1:30 in the afternoon. So I respectfully ask your offices also to be here. So, okay, with that, this budget meeting stands adjourned. Jesus Masi.